Hello students, in this video we will talk about the crop protection management. There are three main enemies of our crop field. What are the three main enemies of our crop field? Those are, the first one is the weeds. Okay, ये हमारे सबसे बड़े दुश्मन होते हैं weeds. उसके बाद the next one is insect pests and the third one is the diseases which they get affected by. So these are the three areas or the three main enemies of our crop field. We are going to learn about them one by one now. Let's move on to the first one. So what are weeds? If somebody asks you what is a weed, so we can say the unwanted plants that grow along with the crops are called weeds. So you should know the definition. They are the unwanted plants. We have not planted them along with our crop, but they come on their own. Okay, so they are called the weeds. We have got three beautiful examples of weed over here. Okay, the first one over here is called xanthium. The second one is the parthenium. And the third one is Cyprinus rotundus. So we have got three of them. The last one is the xanthium. The middle one over here is called the parthenium. And this over here is called Cyprinus rotundus. So these are the names of three weeds. Why removing of weeds is important? Why don't we let these weeds grow in our field, right? Just leave them? No, we cannot do that. Why? Because of these particular reason. Let's read them one by one. So it is necessary to remove these weeds as they use up the nutrients, right? Whatever nutrients are there in the soil, those nutrients are taken up by these weeds. So our crop is going to face a competition with them. So it is better to remove them. Which are meant for the crops? Yes. So the nutrients which should be used by the crops are used by these weeds, which we don't want. So we remove them. Now they also compete for water and light. You are going to irrigate the field, some amount of water is going to be taken by them. So that will be again a competition for our crops, and for light also. Light coming from the sun. Sometimes these weeds, they grow very tall and they spread and they shade our main crops. So when they are creating a shade over our main crop is not able to get our sunlight. So it is better to remove them, and thus they reduce the growth of the crop. So if crops are not getting proper nutrition, if they are not getting proper water and light, growth of the crops will be getting affected. So therefore, weeds should be removed from the cultivated fields during the early stage of the crop growth for a good harvest. When they should be removed? Early. Not once the crop has grown already faced competition for nutrients, water and light. No, in the early stages, all these weeds needs to be removed. What is weeding? So weeding is nothing but removal of these weeds is called weeding. So it is the process of removal of these weeds. Now, it is done by the following methods. There are different methods. The first method is called the mechanical method, where you can use your trowel like this. These are some of the equipments which you can use. With the help of these equipments, you can, mechanical means using your hand, you can uproot, or by using these equipments, you can remove these weeds from the field. Next one is by using some preventive methods. What are the different kinds of preventive methods which we can use? Is like timely sowing of crops. Okay, next one is by using intercropping. The next one is by using crop rotation. By using intercropping or by using crop rotation, once one of the crop is removed, the field is again plowed so that all these unnecessary weeds are removed with the help of this plowing method. Okay, so this is all preventive method. But there is one more method, and that method is called the chemical method of removing of weeds by using weedicides or by using herbicides. So when we are using these weedicides or herbicides, we spray it onto these weeds and herbs so they are killed. Three ways in which insect pest can attack the plants. Just now we saw about how weeds are going to affect our crops, and now here how these insects affect our crops. So what they do is they cut the root. So some of these insects, they cut the roots, they cut the stem, or they cut the leaves. They damage our crops. Some of them they are interested in sucking the cell sap. So they go into the various parts of the plant, from the stem, from the leaves, from the roots. They make holes and they suck the cell sap, thereby damaging the plant. Otherwise, they can bore into the stem, they live into the stem, they go into the fruits, they eat the fruits, they live over there. So like this, they are going to damage our crops. So this is the three ways in which insect pest can damage our plant. Next, how to prevent crops from insect pest. So how are you going to prevent your crop from this insect pest? By spraying pesticide. You spray some pesticide, these pesticides are going to kill those insects. Okay, so we spray pesticides over the crop plants or used for treating the seeds and the soil. Or what we can do is we can spray this pesticide onto the soil, we can spray this pesticide onto the seeds before sowing them into the ground. So by doing these different methods, by spraying pesticides over the seed, over the soil, and over the pesticides are sprayed over the crops, we can save them from these insect pests. Next, let us talk about the disadvantage of pesticides and fumigants. No doubt we are spraying all these pesticides and fumigants, but definitely there is a drawback of using all these things. So excessive use of these chemicals is going to create a problem, because you know all these are chemicals, they are dangerous. So the first thing is that they can be poisonous to the plants and to the animal species. Okay, so you are spraying it onto the plants, it can damage those plants. No doubt you are getting rid of your insects, but the plant is suffering as a result of it. Or it may cause the environmental pollution also. What may happen is when you irrigate or when it rains, so all these pesticides along with the water flow into the nearby river, and it is going to create environmental pollution. Next, diseases in plants are caused by pathogen. This is the third category. We have seen about weeds, we also looked into the insect pest, and now this is the third category, that even plants suffer from diseases. So diseases in plants are caused by pathogens such as bacteria, such as fungi and viruses. I have given over here one example for you, like it is the rust of wheat. Rust of wheat is caused by fungus. This fungus, it creates yellow spots, it creates the black spots, and these black spots appear on the leaves, they appear on the straws or the stems or the branches, and they damage our wheat crop. So what is the method of prevention? The method of prevention is spraying fungicides or pesticides and using disease resistance varieties of these seeds. Let us move on to the next one. Let us talk about the storage of grains now. Now, say for example, you have sprayed the pesticide, you have taken great care during the growth of the crop, and now you have harvested the crop. Now, you have to keep these grains somewhere, right? So, during the storage, remember, grains and seeds, they are subject to spoilage. So, there can be lots of wastage during the storage phase of the seeds. So, to prevent it, we have wastage can be by these two means. There can be some biotic factors which can actually destroy your crops. Other one is abiotic factors. So we have to consider both these factors. They are going to destroy your crops. So let us see what are these factors and how we can prevent our crops. The biotic factors. Some of the biotic factors are like these, are insects. They can damage your stored food grains. Like rodents are there, like mouse, squirrel. They can eat a lot of stored food grains. Fungi, mites, bacteria, or even birds like parakeet, parrots, sparrow, crows. They can also eat a lot of food grains which you have stored. So you have to keep your food grains away from all these biotic factors. Apart from these biotic factors, there are some of these abiotic factors. And the first abiotic factor is the effect of moisture. So you should know that for a safe storage, the moisture content of the food grain should be less than 14% by weight. So remember, generally when the crops we are harvesting, they have a moisture content of say almost 20 to 40%. So this moisture content has to be below 14%. The greater amount of this moisture is going to increase the rate of decay of the microbes, right? So the crop can be attacked by microorganism if the moisture content is very high. So we have to bring down the moisture content to at least below 14% to prevent them from any such damages. The next abiotic factor is nothing but the effect of temperature. So food grains should be always stored at a lower temperature. What do you mean by this lower temperature? It is below 30 degrees Celsius. So that all the insects, all the microorganisms or all the enzyme, they will be less active and the damage of the material is minimized. So you have to remember that, because most of these microorganisms, okay, most of these insects, they grow very well at a temperature above 30 degrees Celsius. Say between 35 to 45, they flourish very nicely. So it is better to keep our crop at a temperature which is low, which is below 30 degrees, so that these enzymes, these microorganisms, these insects are not that great active at this particular temperature. All these factors, remember, all these factors, these abiotic factors and these biotic factors, they contribute to the degradation in the quality. So आपकी quality खराब हो जाती है seeds की because of all these. There will be loss in weight definitely if the insects are going to eat little part of your seeds. So there will be loss in weight. Poor germinability. If you are going to put these seeds into the ground, they are not going to germinate. So poor germinability. Next, decoloration of the produce. So your seeds will lose their color. They will not look appealing. So all these things, degradation in quality, loss in weight, poor germinability, decoloration of the produce, all these is definitely going to lead to a poor marketability. That means if you are going to take these seeds which are affected by all these abiotic and biotic factors and try to sell them into the market, you will not get good money. So how do you prevent? How do you control these abiotic and biotic factors? The first one is by cleaning. So what you have to do, the grains and the other agricultural produce, whatever you get, should be properly cleaned before storage. That is the first step. It has to be cleaned properly. The place where you are going to store, your storehouse, also has to be cleaned properly, and these grains also has to be cleaned properly. The second step is called the drying step. So the harvested food grains should be dried in sunlight. So the first thing is you have to keep your harvest or your crops in sunlight, so that, because I told you that abiotic factor, the moisture has to be brought down to less than 14%. So all these harvested crops, the food grains, have to be kept outside in the sun, so that all the moisture content is evaporated and the moisture content is brought below 14%. Now, once after you have dried your crop in sunlight, then you have to take your food grains and you have to allow them to cool down to the room temperature in shade. Don't directly sun dry and then put it into the boxes, no, or into the gunny bags. What you have to do, let it cool down on its own under shade before storing them. Once you have done the process of cleaning them and drying them, the third method what you can do is for their preservation is to use pesticide solution, okay, or you can also use fumigants. They are sprayed over the gunny bags which are containing the food grain. So you put them into the food grain, okay, into the gunny bags and put pesticides over it, or you can use fumigant in the full storeroom. You can use fumigant. Generally, you know, fumigants, when they are sprayed, they get converted into vapor, so they can easily cover the full area. So fumigation is the most effective method to destroy all the insects in a stored food grains.